Western Sydney, support for Palestine is almost everywhere you look.
Multicultural, different...
Enter Dr Ziad Basuni, a local GP and political activist who plans to take the cause to the next federal election.
How angry are people about that specific issue?
People are very angry. Protests weekly. That hasn't stopped.
My name is Ziad Basuni. I'm a local GP.
This week, Dr Basuni announced he'll run as an independent against the Home Affairs Minister, Tony Burke, in the seat of Watson.
Please, you need to listen to us. If you don't, we will come after you.
I'd like to see the federal government take steps to condemn heavily the current massacres that are going through in Palestine. There are concrete steps to show the support for the people that are suffering in there.
Dr Basuni came to Australia from Egypt in 2004.
Any freedom that you can think of was not available in Egypt unless you're wealthy or you know the right people. So, you know, someone who would protect you, you're fine, or you can buy someone who will protect you. And I couldn't live with that.
He says his early days in Australia were tough. One of his first jobs was as a cleaner at McDonald's in Brisbane.
It was not an easy time, but it taught me a lot about how can life be rough if there is no real support.
He went on to set up 3 medical clinics around Sydney. Dr Basuni says the federal government's treatment of Senator Fatima Payman was one of the reasons he decided to run for Parliament. Senator Payman quit Labor for the crossbench last month, upset with the party's stance on Palestine.
I'm torn, deeply torn.
You can see when someone has to express their opinion, which is actually not in contradiction with the Labor opinion. Like the Labor conference every year supports that position. There's nothing new. But because you're going against what the machine wants you to say currently, the machinery, the mechanism that works within the parties, you get excluded.
From mass rallies to university camps and protests outside the Prime Minister's electoral office, the conflict has divided opinions. It's led to the formation of 2 separate Muslim community campaigns, which argue the government is not doing enough to help the Palestinian cause.
I don't think and don't want Australia to go down the road of faith-based political parties, because what that will do is undermine social cohesion.
The campaigns are not political parties, but aim to inform Muslim voters and endorse candidates. In Melbourne, there's Muslim Votes Matter, fronted by a former community leader, Gaith Graham, and in Sydney, the Muslim Vote, organised by prominent sheikh Wessam Shakawi, who's been rallying outside some government electoral offices.
Is it just me, or have we just heard silence? It is a shame.
Any member, not only me.
730 understands Dr Basuni is likely to be endorsed by the Sydney group, but he's quick to cast himself as someone who has broader appeal.
I want the Muslim vote, the Jewish vote, the Christian vote, the atheist vote, the white vote, the Vietnamese vote. I want every vote in Watson to endorse me.
Both grassroots campaigns are targeting federal electorates around Australia with high Muslim populations. In Sydney seats like Watson, held by Tony Burke, and Blaxland, held by Education Minister Jason Clare, at least a quarter of the population is Muslim, but the total of eligible voters is lower than that.
I've always viewed my seat as a marginal. I never take it for granted. Regardless of who runs, what needs to be known is there is a genuine sentiment in the community of deep frustration that they want our position with respect to Gaza to be stronger.
In the UK, pro-Palestinian independents won 4 seats in last month's election. But will community anger over Gaza here really be enough to defeat sitting members?
The short answer to that is no.
Former federal Labor pollster John Utting says there'll certainly be a contest.
What the survey research shows is that about 1 out of every 5 Muslim voters is prepared to vote for a Muslim independent. So that'll produce quite a healthy result. That'll deliver a mid-teens kind of primary vote in some of these seats. But that's not enough to get in front of the Labor members or even the Liberal members. What sort of compounds the problem of performing better from these groups is the fact that they've got this ceiling over them of popular, well-entrenched members in the government who can deliver for these electorates. So I think it'll just make it very difficult.
You've likened your campaign to the Teals. The Teals were very well funded and up against an unpopular government. You're up against a very popular local member in Tony Burke. He's a minister. What makes you think that you can unseat Tony Burke?
The community's anger towards the no representation is very clear. The community feels no connection. Our words are not heard.
Dr. Basuni says Gaza is one of the many issues he'll campaign on.
Cost of living punches a bit harder here. Housing issues punches more here. Longer waiting times in emergency seem to be longer here compared to any other hospital.
Well, look, I think that's a pretty smart political strategy. It moves beyond your original base. It casts yourself in a much broader light.
Up the road from Dr. Basuni's clinic, Labor supporters are mounting a counter-campaign. They call themselves Friends of Burke, led by prominent community figure Dr. Jamal Rifi.
What's more important is being in Parliament and being in government, because change happens in government.
And they come from different faiths, Christian and Muslim.
There are people out there saying they are going to punish Labor. Well, good luck. And there is a lot of misinformation. Anyone who's going to tell me that Tony Burke is weak on Palestine, that means they don't know who Tony Burke and what he has done.
1, 2, 3.
Friends of Burke!
How do you think that the anger in the community about Gaza will translate into votes?
The anger that we are experiencing should not cloud our political judgment. Stick with your trusted local federal MP. Tony Burke served us well and will continue to serve us well.